Okay, so welcome to Fusion360. Hopefully you're looking at a screen that is similar to mine, or will be soon. So the first thing I'm going to do is highlight some differences in that screen that you actually might be looking at. Your screen might not be blue. I have chosen this look. It's the one that I like the best, but you have an option to go ahead and change that if you want. At the bottom of your screen, there's a toolbar that I am kind of highlighting with the cursor. And if I click on display settings and I go to environment, you can see that there's a couple options, and I'll show you photo booth. That's a little bit too white for me, pretty bright. I do like the tranquility blue, and that's usually what I use. It's kind of irrelevant. It's whatever your preference is, so go ahead and pick something that you like. I do want to highlight different areas of the screen right now. We can see up in the top right corner, it's what I call the Viewcube. And if you want to consider how you're going to model in 3D, you have a bunch of different ways you can look at your shapes at your projects. Notice the word front is kind of highlighted as I hover over it with my mouse. I'm going to use the left click, and if I click on any area of the cube, I'm actually going to click on this top corner, and I hold. I can actually move the screen around as I move the mouse. The key is I definitely have to hold that left click down. So I can kind of orient myself the way I want. I also can just click on a specific area. So if I click on where these two planes meet, one click, it'll adjust the view to look in that direction. It's not too helpful right now because there's nothing on the screen, but there's going to be some times where you want to look at your model from different sides, different views, and the Viewcube helps. So that's the top right-hand corner. At the bottom, where we were already at to kind of look at the display, there's some other toolbars. We'll get to those in a second once we have something up on the screen. But the next place I want to kind of highlight is this area in the top left, not this top toolbar, but the place that's called Browser. Under the browser, there's not too much now. This kind of records all the steps you take to make your shapes, whatever you're trying to model in three-dimensional space. And right now, the only thing we have is our origin. And you can kind of see the name origin. That always shows up when you start a new project in Fusion360. To the left of the word is this light bulb. You might not want that origin there if you're trying to display your model or kind of look at it in a certain way. And if you click on the light bulb, left click with the mouse, the origin disappears. I like to have my origin on because I really want to know where the middle of my kind of virtual universe is. And you're going to find that if you design from the origin, if you try to keep that somewhere in the middle of your model, it's going to help you out in a couple different ways that are hard to explain until you actually do that. And I'll try to do it throughout all the tutorials that I put online. Last thing we're going to see up in this browser area are some of these arrows. And if I click on one of the arrows, it's going to expand that menu. And you're going to see some other things that have light bulbs that are on. I can turn those off. But if I wasn't sure which plane in three-dimensional space I wanted to use, I could just hover over and it might highlight which plane I want. Again, that could be helpful later on once we're starting to do some more complex things in Fusion360. You don't want the left side of your screen all kind of jumbled up. It's eventually going to get there the more you do. So I will kind of minimize that menu as well. We also have an area down here at the bottom left-hand corner that kind of looks like the play, pause, fast forward features on maybe like an MP3 player. We are going to use those later on, but again, we haven't modeled anything. So we're going to see the more shapes we make, the more intricate our model is, the more that kind of pops up on Fusion360. And that's really important because it's going to allow us to kind of control how we change our model. And it's going to be really helpful in the future. Last toolbar is definitely at the top. It's a kind of classic like Microsoft Word looking toolbar. They have these default icons up here. So there's actually two ways that you can click on some of these. If you wanted one of the default icons, you can just click on it, and that'll be kind of the selection you made. But then every single one of these, sketch, create, modify, and so on, has a drop-down menu. So if I left-click on sketch, I'm going to get all of these different options of kind of like actions I can take. And I'm going to choose them based on the shapes I want to make, but I mean, you might think to yourself, hey, how many different ways are there to really make a rectangle? If we just hover over a rectangle, Fusion 360 allows us to make a rectangle 3 different ways. And that's just a rectangle. That's not making just 4 separate lines that connect into a rectangle. So I have a 2-point rectangle, a 3-point rectangle, and a center rectangle. Every time I hover over one of the names, there's a description that pops up. And there's even like a slight drawing you can see next to the words that kind of gives you an idea of what's going to happen. We'll get to a lot of these throughout the tutorials, but again, this is just an introduction to kind of highlight where things are in Fusion 360. Most of the 2-dimensional drawing features are under Sketch. Anytime we want to start to make 3 dimensions, so what do I mean by the difference? A square could be a 2-dimensional shape, and I can turn that into a cube, which is a 3-dimensional shape. I can do that under Create. So Create, and you can kind of see the default icons are all about how you make 2-dimensional objects into 3-dimensional objects. Over to the right of Create, we have Modify. Modify, very good name for it. It's how you modify 3-dimensional objects. How do I maybe cut something in half? How do I hollow it out? How do I round it off? There's a lot of cool features here that are a little bit more advanced. We can get to those. Once I've modified my 3-dimensional structure, well, I can do a couple things under Assemble. Might want to add some motion to them. Let's say I want to model a wheel. I can actually make it spin and model that in Fusion 360. To the right of this is actually one of the most important, in my opinion, features, the Construct toolbar. Right now, under the origin, you have 3 different planes. Well, what if you wanted one in between? What if you wanted one almost like between 2 planes at a 45-degree angle? It doesn't exist on the default, but I can go ahead and make them here. I can position planes wherever I want, and there's a lot of things in Fusion 360 where you need to start on a plane. As I continue to the right, I have Inspect. The tool I only use here often is Measure. If I don't know how long a line or a side of an object is, I can actually click on it and it'll give me that data. We'll get to Insert later on as well. This is where I can maybe import objects that were already designed, usually 2-dimensional objects, and I can use them as is. I might be able to trace over them. So this is helpful sometimes to get a little bit more creative. And as I move to the right, this is the last one. Make. This is actually how we're going to turn our 3-dimensional objects into 3D printable files. I've never used anything in this toolbar other than Make, so it's actually rare that I open this toolbar because the 3D printer is the default icon. So normally I just click right on the printer. So again, to review, we have our middle of our screen represents this universe of 3-dimensional space. The origin is kind of dead center in that 3-dimensional space. Yours might be turned on or off. If it's off, you can go ahead and use the light bulb next to the word origin under browser and turn that on and off as you wish. If you don't like the position of your object, you can, on the top right-hand corner, mess around with the cube to change your viewpoint. And for now, if you don't like the way it looks in terms of the blue background, under display settings in the bottom, you can go ahead and change that environment to be something else. Maybe you want it to be an infinity pool. So that's kind of 360 in a nutshell, the different toolbars, the different areas, and I hope that was helpful. Thank you.